Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan. Today I want to talk a little bit about the notion of spoilers. And this is a thing that I think Vince and I, or Eric and I, did a Geeks Not Nerds on years ago when we used to do that talk show. But I want to revisit it now because I think it's getting harder and harder to decide what it means to spoil something, to figure out people's standards for the idea of spoiling, and to avoid spoilers of every kind if you don't want to know too much or anything at all about something when it first comes out. I think this is a more difficult issue to navigate than it ever has been before in a day and age where instant gratification is king, especially on social media and especially on YouTube. It seems like whenever something comes out, there's 132 reviews already on YouTube before any of us, regular people, plebes, were even able to sit down and watch the thing. And it seems like the day of it being a novelty to get to feel like the first person to see a thing, or in that initial class that first got to see a thing, those days are long behind us. I remember when I was in high school, it was a real big deal to get to see something on opening night, and especially to get to see, talking about movies and theaters, and especially to get to see a midnight premiere for something. That hasn't really been a big deal in a long time. We're still in an age, and I guess with lockdown and the virus and everything, this has changed a little bit recently. It'll be interesting to see if things go back at all to the way they were, where you go see, but by and large, when things do come out in the theater, you go see a thing on Friday, and that's technically opening night, but actually the thing opened wide on Thursday and isn't even really considered early anymore, even though broadly things are advertised as coming out on Friday. So it's not a big deal if you got to see it Thursday, because you didn't have to go in on midnight anymore like you used to, where the thing opens on Friday, so you technically had to see it Friday at midnight, or Thursday at midnight, but rolling into Friday, where it technically is the day that it opened, but it's, really late at night. It's not like that anymore. When things open on Thursday, sometimes there's even showings close to matinee, or 3, 5 o'clock showings, but there's especially 7 o'clock and beyond. So my point is just, it's not that big of a deal to get to see things early anymore, and so spoilers are more rampant than they ever have been. And it seems like people want to be first to put out a review and tell people about a thing, and to have, bragging rights that they got information out about a thing in order to spoil it for people that want to know everything they can about something, because it makes for, easy clicks and stuff. And there's a business in this in a way there didn't used to be, because we all have a platform now. And so, as I always say, pros and cons to everything. There's a wonderful side to this, which is it's easier than it ever has been for people to get their voice heard. And I say that, of course, it's really super oversaturated. It is really difficult right now, if you don't already have a following, of course, to initially build one. But theoretically, the platform is there. The ability to build an audience is still in there, even if there's too many cooks in the kitchen, too many of us trying to do this. But so that is still, I'll put that in the plus column, that you don't have to work in a newspaper anymore for people to see your reviews or to pay attention to your opinion, to what you have to say. But on the flip side, the problem with it is that everybody has a really hard time not finding out about stuff before they want to now. And even if you're not looking for it, I think a lot of people are rushing now to find out, to see a thing, but not even as much because of instant gratification, because they just have to know. It's just they don't want people to spoil it for them. They don't want to find out about a thing before they get to see it. And it is, I think, impossible to have any social protocols about this now, across the board, to have a real standard that we can all agree on. Like, I want to complain we don't have any standard for this, but I also, like I said, don't know that it really makes sense to that it's even possible. I don't know what the answer to this really is, because like so many things, the idea of a spoiler is a really relative thing. It is entirely subjective to the person and to the thing that you're watching or reading or playing, with video games or whatever. Some people, first of all, some people don't mind having things spoiled for them. They feel like they still have the experience even if they knew stuff ahead of time. For some people, it's a puzzle. For some people, it's fun to find out as many morsels about a thing as possible to get an image in their brain. It's like they're the opposite of somebody who doesn't want to walk in with any bias or preconceived notion. They want to have a bias, and they're interested to see if it lives up to their preconception or if it ends up, looking like what they had in their head. That's fun for some people. It's like creating an outline and seeing if it fits in that outline. And some people, of course, a lot of us also don't like that at all and don't want to know anything and feel like as soon as someone even tells us their opinion, we have this preconception that we can't not see, and that taints somehow the experience for us. And there's stuff everywhere in between. For me, it kind of depends on the project. I see myself as more in that latter category for things that I really care about, for things that I'm really interested in. And I'll also say that I feel that way more today than I ever used to. I think when I was younger, and when the kinds of things that I love to see, particularly superhero movies and science fiction and things of that ilk, weren't as prevalent and weren't as mainstream and popular, it was more fun for me to follow the production of a thing, to find out more about it before it came out, because I was just chomping at the bit to get to see that stuff, and I couldn't wait for it to come out. I was impatient about it. I haven't felt that way about this stuff in a long time. Like, some of it is that it itself is oversaturated, and that we've been spoiled by it, and that it's not the novelty, I'll admit, that it once was. I still love superhero movies. I still really enjoy the good ones, and there's still stuff that comes out that I get really excited about, at least while I'm watching it. But I've got patience now in a way that I didn't used to. I can wait at this point. And it is, I'll say that in some ways it doesn't bother me as much as it once did to get like a couple of things spoiled, if it's not like the big giant major plot points. If it's a thing that I can wait on, or I'm not going to see right away, and by the time I see it, maybe I've forgotten that thing. But if it's something that I know I'm going to watch, I really don't want to know anything, and I have to now because of this job, because of what I do, because folks are curious to know what I think, and I really appreciate that anybody is interested in my opinion, and it's a lot of why I'm still doing this. So I never take that for granted. But people want to know, what did you think of this trailer, or what do you think of this casting choice, or the direction that we seem to be going with a thing. And in a perfect world, I would avoid all of that. I would not know anything walking into a thing. And it's, like I said earlier, I feel more that way than I used to, because there's this pressure these days, and I talked about this recently in a Captain Logan show. There's this pressure of consensus now that I didn't used to feel even a few years into doing this. It's a lot worse than it used to be, where if I get a sense, and this is subconscious, and there's really no way around it, and I try to keep other people's opinions about things out of my head as much as I can when I go into a thing. But I don't think I'm capable of doing that entirely. And what'll happen is I'll get a sense of what the consensus seems to be, what people expect you to think about a thing. This is being heralded as a masterpiece. This is being heralded as absolute garbage. And these days, you don't see as much in between, which is funny because we have a lot of really, really polarizing movies and TV shows and things where You'd think that there would be a little bit more in the middle because, theoretically people can't decide, but it isn't that they can't decide. It's that this group thinks that this is absolute brilliant, and this group thinks that it's an absolute dumpster fire, and there's not anything in the middle. And you get that especially with big blockbusters, and huge tentpole things that are simultaneously supposed to be accessible to the masses and also really important on some kind of socio-political level. And those are the same things a lot now for people, for better or worse. Sometimes things that are intended for the mainstream really are that good, and it really does make sense to look at that way. And sometimes I don't think that they are. But the point I'm making is, once you get the sense, and it might not even be correct, because we do, and it's impossible on the internet, live in different, it's impossible not to be, excuse me, living in different bubbles and in kind of echo chambers, right? Where in your circles, it seems like this thing is a masterpiece, but you'll find out that there's actually a lot of people that didn't like it, and you didn't know that because you're not associating with those people, or those aren't the articles that are being sent to your, inbox or whatever. And so, your feed, I should say. And so whether it's really true or not, whatever the consensus seems to be, it's really tough. And I'm speaking as a reviewer now, but I think a lot of people probably feel this way, even this pressure, even if they aren't, talking about this stuff for an audience, where it's just, I'm expected to love this, or I'm expected to hate this. And I want to experience a thing of my own accord. I want it to be just me and the piece. I want to leave a thing, whether I'm reviewing it or not. I want to, and I don't see as many things these days that I'm not reviewing, but I want to walk away from a thing, or whether I'm watching it or reading it or what have you, with just my opinion of it, and then find out what other people think about it. And because then my opinion is my own, and maybe it will change after I have talked to other people and they've brought up things about the thing that I didn't think about. Opinions are malleable, and they should be. And I think, and I've always said this, you should allow those things to change, and for your opinions to grow. It doesn't mean that you're easily necessarily susceptible to somebody else's opinion. It doesn't mean that you're wishy-washy or flip-flopper. This is not, we're not running for government office here. There shouldn't be that kind of pressure to be consistent with an opinion about a thing, I really think. But I'm getting kind of off the beaten path a little bit. This was supposed to be about spoilers. I guess the point I'm making with that on this particular topic is, when too much gets spoiled about a thing to me, whether it be what's in the movie or how people are feeling about a movie, I feel like now I can't play fair with the movie. I feel like it's much more difficult to take it on its own terms at that point, because I know too much about it, the cultural zeitgeist around it, and also how the thing was made, or what plot points or character things are in the movie. And so for me, a spoiler is honestly anything that actually remotely has to do with the movie. Everything's a spoiler. Everything. And like I said, depending on the project, I may or may not mind finding out those things. And I have, learned to live with a certain degree of spoilers, that I'm going to know some things going in, and I'm going to do my best to take it on its own terms. And up to a point, I'll have to see some trailers, and I'll know some casting and some things like that. But you might notice if you watch the Captain Logan show, I avoid as much stuff as I can that I can get away with. And so sometimes something will come up, and somebody will be like, Cap, I can't believe that you didn't know that this particular character was going to show up in this movie, or that this particular plot point was going to happen. And I'll be like, yeah, I kind of wish I didn't, but I'm not blaming anybody, because I'm walking this real thin line with what I do. I am talking about this stuff. I am staying current in to some degree, much less maybe than I used to, just because it's more fun for me if I don't. There's some things I'm sure about, WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier, for instance, that folks knew that when I reviewed those things, with the initial how we felt about it, I was like, it's really cool this was here, I didn't expect it, and stuff, and people will be like, Cap, how could you be surprised by that? We all knew of this. And I'll be like, yeah, but I didn't, and I had a better experience with it because I didn't. But I've also been that guy. I've also been the guy that will roll my eyes when somebody is surprised by a thing, or somebody gets, angry about a element of a thing that they didn't know about going in. And I've used that phrase myself. Well, we knew about that going all the way back. We? Who's we? That guy didn't want to see a trailer. That guy didn't want to know anything about that movie. And who am I to tell him that he should have, that there was a prerequisite going into this movie? There's no prerequisite, and there certainly shouldn't be. Things should stand on their own. At the moment that you're saying that the advertising is a part of the movie, or that the, Wikipedia page, or the, behind the scenes, the press releases, press junkets, the stuff we know about a thing leading up to it is part of the movie, you're lending credence to what I think is one of the worst things going on with fiction at large right now. And this is a thing that I complained about a lot, talking about the Snyder DCEU movies, particularly BVS. The idea that if a creator says something retroactively, it is now canonical with the thing. No. Information, plot points, characterization, all needs to be in the movie or it's not part of the piece. I believe that 100%, without fail. If it ain't there, it doesn't count. If a creator wants to come out and say, I meant to put that in, and I missed it, and that's what it's supposed to be, but I realize it's not there, or this is what it was supposed to be, but we didn't communicate it well enough, people didn't pick up on it for whatever reason, we didn't make it explicit enough, so I see why people didn't notice it. Those are all fair things to say. But when somebody that made a thing, director, writer, what have you, producer comes out and says, this is what it is, and fans use that as cannon fodder for an argument, it really, really bugs me. And so I don't want to be that guy, because as soon as I start saying things like, well, we knew that, going all the way back, I'm lending credence to that line of thinking, in a weird kind of way, right? Like what I'm saying is that all the stuff surrounding a movie, it's not exactly that, but I'm saying that you're supposed to be keeping up. You're supposed to know more than what's in the movie. Or you're supposed to know what's in the movie before the movie comes out. No. So anyway, I'm running away with myself a little bit. Let me get more into the actual topic at hand and say, the reason that we can't really have a consensus, going back to consensus again, but a different kind, the reason we can't really have consensus about what the social etiquette should be surrounding this is, like I said before, there's not going to be any coming to a compromise on what a spoiler is for each person. And the internet does not know, and I think, humanity at large, the society doesn't know what spoiler means. When somebody puts non-spoiler review in a title on a YouTube video, I think that's a misnomer. And I've done it too, hoping that people will by and large kind of understand what I'm saying. But you're taking a big risk doing that, because to one guy, just revealing to some people, spoiler means major plot points, or the big plot twists in a movie, if it has those, what have you. Some people, just knowing too much about the outline of the plot is a spoiler. Something I find myself doing a lot in How We Felt Abouts when we're not doing a full-blown spoiler cast, and it's ostensibly a non-spoiler review, is I'll say, there is a big surprise at the end. Or I'll say, there is, I'll outline part of the plot, and then I'll be like, it doesn't go the way that you expect. That's a spoiler. I'm being vague enough that for a lot of people, I haven't spoiled too much for it to ruin their experience. But it's still a spoiler. It still can create, and I think likely will create, a preconceived notion in your mind, because you might have gone in expecting business as usual, but now you're looking for the way that it subverts your expectations, when I say that. Now you're looking for the big twist, the big surprise. And when you get there and it's not all that surprising to you, you may not appreciate it as much because you might have gone in, based on my review, excited that there was going to be this, this big surprise. And maybe to you, it was too typical, but to me, it wasn't. So how do you get around it? I don't know. A lot of people just do, basic spoiler warnings, of course. I think the easiest thing to do is to, when we're talking about review anyway, and we'll talk for a second about just talking about stuff on the internet that just came out recently or that has been out for a while, and what statute of limitation should be on when it's okay to start talking about these things, because I don't know. I guess that's my point with that. I will talk about that in a minute, but I don't know what that should be with anything. But as a reviewer, I think the easiest thing to do is to speak to an audience that has seen the movie, and then allow people, and obviously anybody that's going to watch a thing is going to watch a thing, just be okay with people that don't care about spoilers, watching it, and just say, I'm going to spoil everything. And I like those. I've started to do this more and more, and I like videos that do this, where the first 10-20 minutes of a thing, because I'm long-winded and I tend to talk a long time, we don't do a lot of short reviews. I'll do a video where it's basically how we felt about the spoiler cast all in one. And up front, I'll do best thing, worst thing, and a sign flip. And yes, there are going to be some things that I would kind of consider spoilers for myself that maybe I wouldn't want to know in there, but I'm not going to get into the weeds, into the real details of the thing until we get later on in the video. And so it's, again, ostensibly a non-spoiler thing. I'm not hitting the big major stuff yet early on in the video. But I think by and large the easiest thing to do as far as review goes is just to review for an audience that has seen the thing already. If you do a quick 5-10 minute here's what I thought of this thing video, I think it's best to be as vague as humanly possible and to not do really any analysis, and to try to not be too cute about it. Really just brass tacks. I enjoyed this, or I didn't enjoy this, and even doing that, obviously it's going to be really generic and boring if you give no details whatsoever. I guess the point I'm making is it's impossible to not spoil anything talking about anything. And we can't all agree on what spoiler means, for ourselves. And again, I don't think we can all even agree on what that is between different things. Because some things, it's not going to be that big of a deal to find out some of those more minor things. And for some things, you may not want to know anything. And maybe you didn't even know that until you go see it. And you're like, wow, I really wish that I hadn't, known about that thing. This is a thing that I've talked to Vince about a lot, where a lot of people have in their minds an idea of what spoiler means, and they kind of hold everybody to the same standards. And I think that's a massive mistake. I think, like I said, I don't know that this is a problem that we can really fix in everybody coming to a term on what exactly spoiler means and how far you can go and when you can start spoiling a thing. So I think the most important thing to do is to be really sympathetic to people who don't think about this the way you do. On either side of this, on either extreme of this, I should say. So if you're a person that wants to know everything, I think that people should allow you to do that. And I think you should not tell them too much about what you know if they don't want to know everything. I think you have to respect the fact that they're not trying to grab up every morsel. And I think that the inverse of that is, of course, also true. A person who doesn't want to know anything should have respect for people that do want to find out everything that they can. And those people should just not exchange too much information. I really think it's that simple. And I think it's really important to not hold people to your standard of what a spoiler is. So if somebody says, I don't want to know anything, I think it's really important to take that at face value and completely literally. Because I'm speaking as a person that has said that before. there are, maybe not everybody is like this, but a lot of people, and me and Vince are in the same camp on this. There are a lot of people, and again, it's not with everything. You know, if a Pirates of the Caribbean movie comes out, I'm not gonna care if I find out about a lot of things in that. In fact, I don't tend to go to those anymore because they got bad, and so it may be a spoiler if one happened to be really good that got me to finally go. I think that's important to note too, is that sometimes, even if you don't want to know things, if you find out a detail about it that you know, that you didn't want in the first place, it actually could make you want to go see the thing. So you know, there's a lot of different sides to this. There's a lot of, you know, reasons that having something spoiled for you can be a good thing. I mean, that's an interesting word, right? Like, spoiler suggests that it's ruining the film. We think of it as just telling us too much about a thing, but the you know, dictionary definition of that, taking it totally literally and at face value, it sounds like, if I find this out, it will completely mess up my experience of the thing. And that's not always what we mean when we say that. But I think you do have to, again, take that literally if a person says that. To a person that says, I don't want to know anything at all whatsoever, that means for them, they're concerned that it is a spoiler with a capital S. It will spoil the experience. Don't tell that person anything. And it does not matter what your definition of spoiler is at all. Just don't do it. I think it's one of the most inconsiderate, unfair, horrible things that you can do to a fan of media, is when they say, I hate this so much. It's a huge pet peeve of mine. And it goes beyond a pet peeve. I think it's completely unwarranted, and I think it's wrong, and I think people should not do it. And I may be coming off too passionate about this, but in my experience, this has happened to me a few times, and it makes me so super angry, because a person can, with totally unwittingly, with the best of intentions, give you information you didn't want, and it can ruin an experience, or it can certainly threaten to do that. So what'll happen very often is you'll say, I don't want to know anything about it at all, and a person will say, this is like my least favorite phrase, let me tell you this one thing. I won't spoil anything. Okay, this is me on the other side. Let me stop you right there. Is it about the movie? Yes, but, okay, then I don't want to know. Right, but let me finish. Okay, if I let you finish, I guarantee you're going to tell me something I don't want to know. How do you know that? Because it's about the movie, and I said I don't want to know anything. Okay, but I'm not going to tell you anything about the movie. Okay, but you just said it was about the movie. Right, but it's about my opinion about the movie. I said anything. Okay, but that's not in the movie. It's what I think of it. Right. That creates a bias. If I know that you loved it, and I know you, and you're a friend of mine, that's going to create a preconceived notion in my mind about what I might think about the thing. I'm telling you, I want to go in blind. This Batman movie, this Avengers movie, this the Star Trek show, whatever it is, thing that's near and dear to my heart. I want to walk in knowing absolutely nothing, or as little as I possibly can, or at least I don't want. And even if I want to know, like who's in it, or what the costumes look like, or whatever. And even if the trailer has spoiled some things for me that I don't think it should have spoiled, like Doomsday Zod from BVS, for instance. That's one of the big notorious ones for me. I still want to be able to take it as much on its own terms as I can for it to just be me in the movie. I don't want to know what you think of it, because that's going to cloud my judgment. And a lot of people don't understand that. Opinions can be spoilers for people because it creates expectations. So even if it doesn't tell you any actual details about the thing, it still clouds your expectations. So, as I alluded to earlier, the last thing I want to talk about is timing, is statute of limitations, as I put it. How long is it okay, or how long should you wait before you can spoil something? Once again, not a thing that we're ever going to come to a consensus on. And it's another thing that a lot of people, and this is the internet, right? I mean, like, I think people are like this I think people have always been like this in real life to some degree. I think the internet enhances this by 100 times. People think that there's a social etiquette to things. In their head, there's a common sense, obvious answer to stuff. Well, of course, you would wait X amount of days before you start talking about a movie that just came out. Or common sense, obvious thing in my brain. Of course, this counts as a spoiler. This character is going to be a turncoat or a mole or turn out to double cross the protagonist in the middle of the movie. That's a spoiler. But this character is from this town is not a spoiler, and we can all agree with that. Yeah, no, we can't. And just like with that stuff, the time allotment thing, people will take as a thing that obviously we should all agree on. And will get really angry if somebody breaks their arbitrary rule on it. Maybe they heard it somewhere. Maybe for them and some other people, this has been how it's been for a while. But again, where they all wait a week and then they start talking about it. And somehow they expect the whole rest of the world to be just like that. Because again, we live in a multiverse now. As far as fandom goes, and the internet, I think even kind of in general. I think this is true with true with a lot of different subjects. Maybe every subject. I think it's true with politics. I think it's kind of true with science. I think it's true with everything. Maybe everything. We don't live in a universe anymore. We live in a multiverse, at least a multiverse of ideas. You live in a universe. I live in a universe. They intersect sometimes. Sometimes they cross over. Sometimes you get stories where somebody will pop in from one universe into another one and then go back. And sometimes they overlap. But we don't live in one unified world. Everybody has a different experience and a different way of looking at things, and of course that was always true. But the part where we all have different, and I don't mean for this to get into a political place, especially just talking about spoilers, but it's hard not to get to this place because we're talking about social media and we're talking about the internet. We can't all, if we can't all agree on what the facts are for a lot of things, I don't see how we could possibly all agree what social etiquette should be on a thing. And so the point I'm making is in your circle, in what I'm calling your universe of friends or of fans on message boards, in your Discord. Discords are like separate worlds or separate universes, right? Maybe there's an etiquette. But as soon as you leave your home country and you go to somebody else's on the internet, all bets are off, man. There are people that think that you should watch a thing seconds after it first dropped, and all bets are off. If I start saying things about something online that just came out and I give you huge major spoilers, whatever that means, it was your responsibility to watch it. It was your responsibility to watch it. If you really cared, you would have watched it as soon as it came out. It doesn't matter your experience. It doesn't matter your situation. It doesn't matter if you have a job or if you have multiple jobs or if you have children or if you're in the hospital or if you're out doing yard work that really needs to get done, or if your power went out, or if you were at a funeral. Doesn't matter. It was your responsibility, if you really cared, to see that thing. And I think people really do have this mindset, and it's not my fault that that you didn't see it. So I can say anything I want to in anywhere. If you want to put out a YouTube video or a blog or whatever, or a Facebook post and go spoilers, then drop below. And there's this huge space. Or that Discord thing where you can put in, like, I like this, like black blocks over your text, where if a person wants to read it, they have to click on it. But if they don't click on it, they can't see it. And so you're not actually spoiling anything, and there's no words there whatsoever. So you really aren't spoiling anything. the amount of text you write will not create really any preconceptions for me because I have no idea what it is that you said. Some people are long-winded and some people aren't. So I won't go as far as to say, well, you wrote 19 lines, that gives me too much of a preconceived notion before I go see a thing. I don't think that's true. I think that those things are okay. A lot of people aren't doing that. A lot of people are going around in YouTube comments or in tweets or Instagram or wherever and immediately assuming that the whole world has seen the thing that they have seen. That's inconsiderate. That ain't fair. That's, I think, kind of ridiculous. But that's the extreme of it. How long do you wait? A day? A week? A month? What about something that came out 20 years ago that younger people haven't gotten to see, that they might really appreciate the experience of not getting that big giant twist at the end? Is it okay just because it's 25, 30 years old to spoil the end of The Sixth Sense or the end of Fight Club, etc., etc.? Even Empire Strikes Back, as ridiculous as that might sound. Well, yeah, we all know the big twist at the end of Empire Strikes Back, Cap. It's in the zeitgeist. It's part of the culture. Everyone knows that. It's the most quoted line in cinema. And yeah, I'm not even going to say what it is right now, just in case there happens to be that kid watching that doesn't know what I'm talking about. But like, I don't know. Because I get both sides of that argument. I get the argument of, well, yeah, you're spoiling a 30-year-old thing at this point. But when it's something like really major like that, where it would really affect your experience, like, you know, maybe I want to show my kid Planet of the Apes, and he doesn't know the end of that movie. He doesn't know the thing with, I won't even say it. Just for the sake of this video, and of course, I spoil these things all the time in other videos, but I just feel like for the sake of what I'm talking about, it's best in this video to actually spoil nothing from anything. I'm not even going to do that. I cannot be consistent with this. I am an absolute hypocrite on this. I think it's impossible not to be. I think it's impossible because sometimes to make a point, and so to make the point I'm making right now, I'm not going to spoil anything from any of those movies that most of us all know what I'm talking about. When I say the thing at the end of Planet of the Apes, we all know what I'm talking about. I also have now mentioned that these are things with big giant twists, so if somebody has not seen them, they're going to be watching for those things as they sit down and see them. But what if you want to make an allusion to something in order to make a point about something else, and it's just the right metaphor, or it's just the right, you know, it's just the right connection, then you're stuck, then you have to. And I guess you can say spoiler alert, but how often does a person actually pause the video when you say that, or mute it for a little bit? And how clear can you make it unless you meticulously go in and put in timestamps later? Like, this is how long you have to wait until I've spoiled the thing and then you come back and listen to me. And even if you do that, you've missed a grand point, maybe, that affects the whole video, the whole analysis, or what have you. And again, I'm speaking now more about, you know, video and YouTube videos and analysis and review and stuff. But I think even in just like conversation with people, this is a thing that comes up, and it's a problem. And I don't have any answers here. I've already talked for almost 40 minutes, and the point I'm making is I don't have any answers. I just kind of wanted to vent about it for a little bit because it's really frustrating, and to say, if I'm making any point, it's take everything on a case-by-case basis, as I always say, and be considerate of people who don't think the way that you do, and understand that not everybody has the same background that you have, or your personality, or your, you know, way of thinking, and your sensibilities, right? Even if you don't understand, even if you are a kind of person that is fine with everything being spoiled for you before you see a thing, and you don't understand why somebody else doesn't want that, who are you to say that they shouldn't think that way? That's not fair. I don't think. So I just think that we should be reasonable about this with individuals. I think the best thing to do with something that just recently came out is to err on the side of not spoiling anything, or when you're talking with individuals, make sure they're okay with knowing things about a thing and find out if they've seen a thing before you start talking about it. With something that's been around for 2 weeks or a month or whatever, I still would kind of try to feel people out a little bit. I think it's different with different circles too. Like on the channel, when we get past a few weeks, I start to assume that the majority of people watching have seen that thing because especially if it's a superhero thing, if it's something like the kind of thing that we talk about a lot on the channel, our audience is largely going to have seen that thing, or if they haven't by now, they're not going to care if it's spoiled. I think it's impossible to avoid spoilers with what I do entirely, like by and large overall. And you'll notice I do my best, and sometimes I do definitely slip up, where like I'll say, hey, I'm gonna spoil this thing, maybe stop watching for a few minutes and come back, or I'll put a spoiler warning somewhere. At this point, most of How We Felt Abouts end up being spoiler cast to some degree, especially if we do them live. Not all of them, if it's something that's a little bit more obscure or that's not as big of a thing on the channel. But again, it's different with different circles. If you're not sure, I think it's best to err on the side of asking first. This is a situation where I think it is better to ask permission than to ask forgiveness. I really do. When you're talking about something that's been out forever, I think that's also a place where you have to play case by case, and I don't think it's fair with every person to go, well, dude, it's been 30 years. You've had time. Well, not if he's 15, right? Not if he's 20, not necessarily. And even then, maybe he's a guy that just got into a particular genre and hasn't seen all that stuff and would like to get to have that experience unfettered. I also have to say that life isn't fair. I think that on an individual basis, we should each be as fair as possible to another person, of course. But to expect the whole world to coalesce to our will and to go, hey, like we shouldn't be, on an individual basis, we also shouldn't be entitled about it. So if you are that 15-year-old that wants to see Planet of the Apes because you've heard that it's a brilliant movie, but you don't know how it ends, and like The Simpsons or something spoils it for you, I don't think you should lash out at the universe. It is a very old movie. So, like, yes, the universe has been talking about it. But, again, it's individual basis versus cultural basis. Versus society basis. If a person, if on an individual level, you're having a conversation with a person, and they say, Planet of the Apes is my favorite movie, and you go, ooh, I want to see that at some point, please don't tell me anything. I think you owe it to that person not to tell them anything. That's what I wanted to talk about today. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you again with more videos real soon here on Geefolution. Leave your comments about this and let me know where you fall on the spoiler spectrum, and if you have ideas about, and especially if you have better ideas than my simply case-by-case, individual basis, be as fair to other people as possible, but will never come to a consensus. If you think you have the answer to this, feel free to leave that in the comments as well. And in the meantime, I was Captain Logan, and I'll see you again real soon.